Going to be shifting gears now to our hashtag Africa Focus feature. This is where we focus on some of the most pressing stories that are doing the rounds here on the continent of Africa. What you need to know about our home continent, Africa, and everything that's happening, the politics, the socio-economic challenges, and some of the instabilities that keep plaguing the continent. This morning on the feature, we'll be turning our attention to Togo, where a fresh wave of anti-government protests have turned deadly. 7 people have unfortunately been confirmed dead. This includes 2 minors, as security forces are accused of unleashing shocking violence on civilians in the capital of Togo, Lome. The unrest erupted over the continued rule of Fauri Nasingbi, who has now taken on a powerful new role with no term limits, deepening fears of democracy in decline, and, bodies essentially being pulled from lagoons. Protesters say they were beaten, and civil society groups are sounding the alarm on state repression. And joining us now live from Togo is journalist Arafat Afuane, who's going to be giving us the very latest on the ground. Arafat, good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media.
Wa alaikum salam. Good morning to you, and good morning to also those who are watching at us on this morning.
I think we can kickstart the conversation with maybe you giving us, just the lay of the land, the climate right now in Lome. What did you witness during some of these protests, and how did the violence ultimately unfold?
Yes, in Lome we saw it was on last Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Protesters have walked. They are going. They want to protest about the political decision that government has taken since last year on the modification of the constitution. But as you said, they have been beaten, and the security forces have used enough repression, enough violence to beat, and we saw violence everywhere in Lome.
The question is why? Why are people of Togo going out to the streets? What's the main cause of the protests, and ultimately, what do they want to achieve?
What they want to achieve is first to tell government that life is very expensive in Togo, in Lome. To tell government that there is no hope for the youth in Togo, and every youth people want to leave the country. Everyone wants to go to Europe or go to another African country, because here we don't youth think that they don't have hope here. They can't achieve themselves in Togo, so they protest to tell it to the government.
I've been reading some reports coming from the government itself. They are insisting that some of the deaths were due to people drowning, and not necessarily from police brutality. Based on what you're hearing and seeing on the ground, does that explanation hold water, or is the government just trying to absolve themselves from these deaths?
The families of those who have been killed tell us that their parents have been killed by guns or by the violence they supported. And in one footage we saw a young man who is shouting to the policemen that he is shouting when they were beating him. He was shouting that we all are Togolese. We all are Togolese. He was shouting, but they were beating him such when he was dying, we saw a policeman who climbed on him and put his feet on him,
Mm,
fitting him that such as he died. So when the government tell us that it's droning, those people have been killed by droning, it's just amazing.
mm, mm, very, very sad picture that you're painting there. How much of these protests are also tied to the president of Togo, Fauri Nasimbi's new role as the president of the Council of Ministers? His family has ruled Togo, I think, since 1967. Is there a generational power entrenchment, and that's one of the reasons why resistance is gaining traction on the ground? Are people saying we have had enough with this family and with this presidency, and we want to see a change? I mean, since 1967, just one family running the country, it doesn't make for a good picture. It doesn't look like a democracy that is healthy and functional.
Absolutely. As you said, since 1967, it was for Nyasimbe's father, Nyasimbe, the man who died in 20, 2005. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
2005. So since this year, it's for Nyasimbe who is powering Togo. And now we can notice that it's not his new role of president of councils of Togo that is being protested by citizens, but it's the way the constitution amendment has come. When you see it was in a night that parliament just had an, an assembly, and on the morning they tell us that the constitution has changed. So
Mm,
it's that way the protesters are accusing. They are not against the whole of president of council or the change of the of the regime, but it's the way the government has proceeded to change the constitution which is protested.
mm. Mm. I wanna just focus on the current moment. What are you witnessing? Is life back to normal? Are people going to work? Are you anticipating more protests to take place, or people are now fearful because of the number of people that have been killed, unfortunately?
Yes. Even on this morning, there is a call to protest, but when you see in Lome on this morning, everything is calm. Everything is calm now, but the the organization that's called to protestation say that they will protest until they have good news. And so their good news now is, first of all, make some products prices shut down, and some of them also are calling to the demission of the president for Yasimbe.
Mm, mm, mm. Let's just wrap up the question now with Amnesty International. Well, they've said in recent posts that there's also a crackdown and arrests on journalists, and we've seen the deaths happening. How are journalists and activists affected by this? Are they clear targets of the government in the last few days?
Here, journalists and activists' work has been it's become very hard to do the work here in Lome, because when you see our colleague of TV5 Monde has been recused to film when she went on some protesters' fields. The policemen have directly arrest her and tell her not to take any pictures there. And activists also, when you see they ban internet, and it's very very difficult now to do. Everybody is very shouting because it becomes very hard to do the work.
Mm. Mm. No, I think we're going to leave on that note. Arafat, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your time. And hope as the situation continues to unfold in Togo and there are more developments, we'll definitely be catching up with you for the latest.
Thank you.
There was a Togo-based journalist Arafat Afuane giving us a sobering look into the deadly unrest unfolding in Lome, with rising anger, unanswered deaths, and a deepening authoritarianism. I think we can all agree Togo's crisis is far from over. And yeah, it really does put into perspective, man, especially as a South African. Looking at the situation unfold, having one family since 1967. So since post-colonialism, essentially in Togo, one family has been running things. You know, it's been son after son after son, and the situation has not been getting better for the citizens. And people are heading out to the streets, similar to what we've witnessed in Kenya just a few days ago, last week, rather. There's a feeling of something that resembles or might resemble an Arab Spring happening on the continent. Hey, whether it's the protests in Uganda that we've seen earlier in the year, it's the protests in Kenya, which have been the headlines of the continent since last year, going into this year, and Togo, what we're witnessing there. There's something that's happening on the continent, and it'll be interesting to know and to look at our own government and kind of probe and ask if they're watching and if they're consulting with some of their colleagues in the continent about the state of affairs and things spiraling out of control. I mean, if you look at South Africa itself, the levels of unemployment, the levels of poverty, and just the disproportional dispensation of wealth, the inequality between the rich and the poor, the youth, and how disfranchised and just out of the conversation. This unemployment is in governances, almost in every sphere of South Africa's existence. Young people are not part of the conversation. And you just ask yourself, until when, the scenes that we're seeing unfold on the rest of the continent make their way here to South Africa? Because as the old adage goes, one day the poor will have nothing to eat but the children of the rich. Not fear mongering, just the reality. Going to take a quick break. News and views continues after this.